We're here to explore diverse career paths through personal experiences and real life examples.
And also to offer profound insights to inspire your professional journey.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Work Without Borders. I'm Flora.
Hi, everyone. I'm Calvin. Today we have the honor to invite a guest who's a Canadian director and writer from Chengdu. And he is best known for directing this film called American and Odyssey to 1947, which was premiered on the Newport Beach Festival and it also was placed on the Jonathan Rosenbaum list of best film of 2022. So welcome, Danny, to our podcast.
Welcome,
Oh,
Danny.
it's my honor to be here as well. Excited to speak to you guys today.
Yeah, so Danny, can you tell us a bit about your film, Odyssey 1947, that was placed in the best film of 2022?
Just as in like the production of it, like leading up. Yeah, so the film, to explain it is basically the story of a few Americans, like three Americans. We follow their journey that leads to the year 1947, and it mainly follows the life of director, famed director Orson Welles, and his journey in from being a child to creating arguably the greatest film of all time in Citizen Kane to ultimately exiling from America. So that's the premise of the film and
Mm,
what it's about.
mm. So when Flora and I were doing the research, before we having today's podcast, we were very, I would say, surprised because we're thinking that you, as a Canadian filmmaker from Chengdu, what brought you to do this film that is about a fraction of history from America? What inspired you?
It's pretty funny. And you just reminded me of a story that when I was doing one of the interviews, I was on shoot. I've actually forgotten about this until like this very moment. But I went to um, one of the interviewees' houses, and in his backyard, they're a white family, but there was an older Asian lady in the back, and she was like, "Oh, you're from Chengdu. I'm from Chengdu as well." And I was like,
Oh my
"Really?"
God.
And she's like, "What made a Chengdu boy come all the way to New York, Caramel Lake, to do a documentary about 1940s America?" Um, but what got me into this was that during the pandemic, you know, I was already kind of making my name for myself at that point, but haven't really made a serious film yet. Haven't made like a proper film that got into film festivals and such. And so during the pandemic, I started doing my research. I didn't go to film school or anything like that. So I wanted to watch, the greatest films that was ever made. I just wanted to be a student of the game. And the first film that I watched was this movie called Citizen Kane, and I was just immediately that just got my attention, and it was made me just like want to be a filmmaker even more with the way he told the story. And when I found out that the same person directed the film, starred in the film, and wrote the
Yeah.
film, I was very intrigued by his story. And so um, from there, I did more research about this director named Orson Welles, and I found out that when he was in his 30s, in the prime of his career, he just left America, and did not come back for 30 years, and that was 20 or 30 years. But that was very interesting to me, and I wanted to find out why. And so from there,
Mm.
through more research, I really wanted just to, when I was beginning the project, I just wanted to make like a simple YouTube video. But as I started reading more and more about the story and finding out more about America at the time, and kind of just seeing the parallels of some of the same problems that we're dealing with today,
Mm.
I realized that I really wanted to make a film. And from there, I started requesting interviews from these famous historians and scholars and even actors. And surprisingly, I don't know why they all said yes to being interviewed. And so I
Wow.
was able to go on this journey to pretty much get all the interviews done, and came home, edited the project, and that's kind of how it started. that's the decision of making making this film.
Wow. That's kind of a serendipity, but also like something you really wanted to do, and then you just went for it. That's amazing. I wish I had that enlightenment moment in my life, especially early on.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. It's it's definitely a feeling that you get the vision, and then to see it actually like played out is just a feeling that you can't describe.
Right. So when you started this project, we all know like it's easy to kind of like start it, but keep it moving, you need time and efforts and financial support. How did you get all these? Like, what was your status when you were starting this project, and how did you get all the support you needed?
So it's actually kind of interesting because I think one of the big parts you missed on for just like the things you need for a project like this, especially in the artistic field, is luck. I think that's probably the most important when you're in the creative field. But I was lucky enough to have a when I started out. I always wanted to be a content creator. It was never, wanting to be a director, but I wanted to make it on YouTube when I was a kid. And out of when I was in college, I had a job at this dash cam company. And through that, I was able to have a camera at my disposal at all times. So I was kind of making my own YouTube videos around that
Right.
time. And a lot of it kind of blew up, and I kind of gained a following from there. And I made this project in 2019. It was called Square One, and
Yeah.
it got like pretty. It was pretty successful, and I was invited to tour the world to play it at different places. But at
Hmm.
that point, it was still like a fan project. It wasn't.
Hmm.
It wasn't a serious film. But from that, I was able to start my own company and invest in
Right.
my own cameras and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And because of the success of the first project, I was able to have a lot of friends come on board for this project just because they believed in me. I applied for grants and stuff like that for the project, but most of the people that was going to be in this film were older. I didn't want to risk waiting it out for too long, and it was such a what's it called? So, like catching lightning in a bottle. I really wanted
Yeah.
to just get this project done because of so many of the interviews that I've gotten were just
Hmm.
it was just like pure luck. It's
Hmm.
people always ask me like, how do you get these people to say yes? And it's like I don't know either. I ask myself that question. For example, in our film, there was a famous actor in it, and
Yeah.
there's a famous actor that we got, and the only reason we had him was that one of the earlier authors I interviewed um, turned out to be good friends with him, and then suggested me to interview him, which then I got to interview him. And for documentary filmmaking, it's a lot easier than narrative filmmaking in the sense that you don't have to, you're not paying people to be in your interviews, right? And
Right.
Mm,
so that saves a lot of expenses. And for
Hmm.
me starting out, I think it was a great starting point just to have talking head interviews. And from there, you just try to make a realistic budget. I know I'm not going to be able to
Right.
compete with with the big companies of the world and the
Hmm.
films that they're putting out, putting millions
Hmm.
of dollars into it.
mm.
But I know that with my team, I have a really small team. I did the biggest way to cut costs is to do as much of the work as you can by yourself. So I was the cinematographer, I was the editor, I was the director, I was the writer, set designer, did the lights all by
Wow.
myself, did the sound
Wow.
pretty much by myself. And so that was a way to cut costs in that sense. But so from a lot of the money we've saved doing that, I could put into post production, and so I could spend that money to hire someone to compose music for us, and someone to do sound design for us, and someone to do coloring. And that was really the three outside hires. The other two is just a graphic designer who was my best
Hmm.
friend growing up. He's actually from Chengdu as well, and
Wow.
So he was always interested. We were always interested in doing a project together,
So
and
cool.
this we were able to make our dreams come true through this project. And my girlfriend Shania, she was my associate producer, helping out with a lot of the research and stuff like that. So just it's really remarkable that it all came together. And I'm just I kind of just you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can kind of only connect the
Yeah.
dots looking backwards. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting now, like looking back at how it all happened.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the fact that you mentioned luck, because a lot of time people are trying to draw a conclusion from other people's success and trying to find a path for themselves to be successful, while one big element is actually luck. And a lot of things in our world, in our life, is very random. So I appreciate you mentioned that. And then you didn't draw everything down to your ability and your capability kind of thing. Um,
Mm.
on top of that, I was wondering, your first project, Square One, is about Michael Jackson, and then right now, an Odyssey to 1947 is about Orson Welles. So, do you have a like? I spot a ongoing theme about bibliography of like a certain figure. Is that where your interest is?
Um, I guess because I think in Orson Welles, I kind of saw similar traits to Michael Jackson. Um, one of the people that is very close to Orson Welles, related to Orson Welles. We've been in contact throughout. Orson Welles' daughter. What I found out was that Orson Welles' daughter messaged me one day. Like, she sent me an email, and it's like she doesn't send emails, and she told me that she was a close personal friend to Michael Jackson. Like, Michael Jackson and Orson Welles' daughter were best friends, and I had no
Oh,
idea
wow.
about this. And he would used to fly her out, and they would like hang out for days at a time. And she was like, "I'm so happy you're the one making this project." And I had
Oh
no
my
idea.
God.
So through that, the the thing that a luck again, because that when I was making this project, um, people were telling me, the Orson Welles estate, very strict about projects about Orson Welles. They're gonna come to make sure they get a part in your film, but that just never happened because of this luck that she happened to be great friends with Michael Jackson, and through me, she gave approval to use whatever footage I wanted of Orson Welles, and so that was
Wow.
extremely
Wow.
extremely. And I know that other films did not have this luxury, but having the support of just I think doing the Michael Jackson project, it gave me the credibility that I can do a film of that of something like this, so that it was very easy for the the people who I wanted to interview to accept this. I can
Mm.
say something like, "Hey, my film, was number one on this platform or whatever," and it's much easier to stomach than just like, "Hey, I'm a first time filmmaker. Can you do my interview?" Right. So I do think for me, I always wanted to. I always like studying the greats, just kind of trying to kind of find like a common thread behind between these people. Growing up, I was a big Kobe Bryant fan. I was a big LeBron James fan, Michael Jackson, of course, and then Orson Welles. To see someone similar, it's just very interesting to go down that rabbit hole. And whether that continues or not with my from future projects, I'm not sure. Maybe two is enough, but certainly in the first two, there is a pattern there.
Mm.
That's just amazing.
And
Too.
it's like about the luck part again. It's like and so how it works in the film industry is that when you make a film, you're trying to get into film festivals, right?
Mm.
That's what you're trying to do. And there are first tier film festivals and second tier film festivals, right? And usually the world premiere, the festival that you premiere at first, is usually your biggest festival, and it's
Mm.
usually
Oh,
you
wow.
go down from there, right? Yeah,
Oh,
because if you're
no.
a big film, if you're a big film festival, you will want the first screening to be at your festival, right? You don't want someone's leftovers or per se. Um, so for me, my dream when I made this project was always to premiere at an Oscar qualifying film festival, and dream big, right? And I didn't know how how much luck played into this, because you're sending your film off to film festivals and it's being watched by like a film student or like a volunteer, and they're watching like thousands of films a week, a month. You're competing with thousands and thousands of films, for basically 5 spots, right? And so we were submitting to film festivals from December of 2021. We didn't get into our first film festival until September of 2022. So it was like a full
Wow.
year later of just constant no's, right? And it's very hard not to get it's very hard not to be just like discouraged and be like, oh, it's just like I made a mistake,
Of
but
course.
we kind of stuck through. And what happened was that when we got that opportunity to premiere at Newport Beach, Newport Beach is a great film festival, but it's not an Oscar qualifying film festival. I kind of just wanted to get it out there at that point, right? Because it's been a year. I don't
Fair
want to
enough.
keep like saving this world premiere for a festival that's never going to call. So once we got into Newport Beach, we premiered there, and one of the people in the crowd was this lady who really loved our film, who then sent our film to one of the greatest film critics of all time, Jonathan Rosenbaum, you called earlier. And he was the
Mm,
one who then reviewed our film and put it on his list for best films of the year. And the following year, because of that review, that's what got us into, Oscar qualifying film festivals. But so,
That's amazing.
if that person was not in the crowd that day, like that
right.
probably would not have happened. So, it's really hard to gauge success and how
Mm,
good of a project you have in the creative industry, because sometimes it just takes one person knowing someone who knows
yeah.
someone who happens to be
So
in the
true.
crowd
Yeah.
on a certain day.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. Again, I think I really, really love what Flora said earlier, right? Like, I really appreciate Danny's honesty on how he emphasized a lot, because I do think that having to work hard is one essential elements for being successful, but also luck. I think sometimes when you talk to people about their success story, they usually ignore this part. But I think
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like what Danny says, right? Like, this is also very, very important, because without luck, like, no matter how hardworking you are, maybe you will never get there, right? Like, if that person was not in the crowd that day, maybe we will never see this film to be placed in the Oscar qualified film festival, right? So yeah, I
yeah.
think this is yeah, I think I really appreciate. Um,
And it's like, now thinking back, it's like we so one of the film the Oscar qualifying film festivals that we got into, someone happened that was called Thessaloniki Documentary Festival in Greece. Someone in the crowd there was from a UK film theater who saw it, who then invited me to do the special screening, not a special screening, but we did a 2 week run in
Mm,
theaters in the UK. And then from there, we got invited to New York to do a 1 week run, which got
Amazing.
us, officially qualified for the Oscars. And then one of the main voters put our film on one of the main lists, competing for the Oscars. He put us as one of the top films competing, and so that
wow.
got
Wow.
us even more attention. So it's thinking back, but then obviously, um, a lot of it is like sometimes it swings too much to the other way when people are like, "Oh, it's just luck." I remember when I did
Mm,
my first project. People were like, "Oh, he's just of course he got so lucky, like one
No,
project, like he gets all this information
I
and all of that."
disagree. I
Or someone,
disagree.
or people who are
Yeah.
like, "Oh, like if we had the same information we could," that was one of the stigmas that I try to fight. It was that, when I made my first project, people were like, "Oh, he was just in the right place at the right time."
mm,
He if we had the same information we could probably do the same. So for my second project, I really wanted to prove that, it's it's not just luck as well.
Of
But
course.
no.
That's why I
definitely
say, right. It's a
for
combination of both. Yeah.
it's it's when the opportunity presents itself, you got to be ready to take
Gotta
advantage
be
of it.
ready. Yeah.
People don't see, all the years of trying to be a vlogger on YouTube that I had, that like amounted to basically nothing, nothing
Mm,
at all. So it's just something that I kind of reflect on sometimes.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
For sure. Yeah, so like when opportunity presents itself, right, you gotta be ready. So like here comes the hard work, here comes your like your own skill sets. Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
I completely agree. It's
'cause-
just not, it's not pure luck. Like luck is
yeah,
is essential, but it's not a must. Yes.
exactly. Like in
Uh,
this field, in the creative field, when you're making your own projects, it's like it's really just like you're sitting around for like 2 months and then maybe an idea comes, or like you're sitting around
Yeah.
like three,
mm,
4 months, an idea comes, and then you gotta evaluate if it's a good idea, and then then you put your all into it. And then it's like you're busy for like a year straight, and then you might have
Mhm.
nothing again for 3, 4 months. It's
Mhm.
like a
Mhm.
roller cycle of emotions.
yeah,
Fair
yeah,
enough.
exactly. So Danny, I'm curious. So you call yourself a Canadian filmmaker from Chengdu, right? Like, how did you see that cultural aspect of Chengdu, like that Chengdu culture, um, attribute to your filmmaking?
Um, I feel that I'm always like at my core, I'm from Chengdu. It's just like that's never gonna change. I feel, um, for example, and so much of what I put into my project is like, my personal experiences, either
Mhm.
through metaphorically or directly. A lot of the in my film American, um, when we were making it, I knew that one of the main storylines is going to be about Orson Welles and President Franklin Roosevelt, right? And we're going to be talking a lot about, the, the positives of Franklin Roosevelt. And, but, in doing that, you're going to be ignoring, the internment camps, the Japanese internment camps, and how that, still affects, Asian Americans and the perception of them today. And so
Mhm.
that's why I wanted a storyline in there about Howard Kakita, a Japanese boy who was in the atomic bomb, and his parents were in the internment camps.
Mhm.
So I guess that's not really Chengdu related, but I think just me being Asian American, Asian Canadian, um, from Chengdu, I gotta always remember that. Right, there's not many people. You go on these festival tours. There's not many people that look like me. Right, they're usually a lot older, a lot paler. But um, it's really cool just to represent your city. My first film, Square One, I was invited to do a Chinese tour. That was incredible, and the first location that invited me was actually Chengdu. So I was able
That's
to do
so
a premiere in
awesome.
front of. I was able to do a premiere in front of like my family and my friends, and I tell people this all the time. Like, if I win an Oscar, like I still wouldn't get the same reaction that I got that day in Chengdu. And, like it was
That's amazing.
incredible. They they
I'm
they had an
I'm so
IMAX
touched.
theater. They had an IMAX theater booked out, and people were buying floor seats, like floor seats
Oh,
in a movie theater. So
Wow.
they were sitting along the staircases, and just seeing my parents there, seeing like my grandparents, and
Oh.
I will always like my grandma didn't go to movie theater like in years, and that was like the first movie she gone to. And now every time that I have a film, I always make sure that this is like one of my rules is that before any premieres, like the day before my premiere, my family gets the first screening in China, in their home. So I don't know. I just feel like when you got the Chinese background, it's just I feel a lot of people growing up. When I was growing up, a lot of people try to shy away from it, and they try to
Yeah.
hide their Chineseness or whatever. But I've just learned to embrace it, and I'm so proud to be from Chengdu and from China. And I want to embrace that identity while also acknowledging that I had the privilege of growing up in Canada, and
Yeah.
having the resources and the friendships that I've developed here. And it's something that I'm very grateful for, and I'm gonna continue to embrace.
That's so amazing. I'm so touched listening to that. So, if anyone wants to ask you this question after you say, I'm a Canadian filmmaker from Chengdu, and then they ask, what do you like one thing about Chengdu? What would you say? What's your answer?
I
What's one
think
thing you want to tell everybody
one
about
thing
Chengdu?
um
Huh?
one thing I want, like, Chengdu, it's just like obviously the obvious answer is the food. Obviously, like the diversity of
Okay.
the
Yes,
food,
yes.
you know,
Yeah.
which is like I think it's so crazy right now because in Vancouver there's
Mhm.
Moloton places all over the place now, and there
Uh-huh.
is like Moloton places that opens until 2 a.m. here, and it's like you go there and it's like
Mm,
packed with kids of all ethnicities, and it's
mm,
like wow, like our culture is like so universal.
mhm.
Growing up, you're told from other Chinese people even at times that Chengdu food so spicy. Oh, like that's the only thing that people know about it though, right?
Mhm.
And then you come to see now that it's every city that I visited in the U.S. over the years. There's like at least one Chengdu hot pot restaurant. Growing up here, there was maybe like two in the entire city, and my family would go there. Every month to kind of just like see what it's like. And now there's like two on every street. It feels like, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And
Awesome.
I
I
feel
always feel very proud walking in, right?
yeah,
Seeing like,
yeah,
Caucasian people
exactly.
eating hot pot, like, ooh.
It's amazing, and I feel that it's I'm still getting used to it, but you
Mhm.
because I grew up, I went to school in Victoria, so every time I feel
Mhm.
like I came back to Vancouver, there would be just a couple more of one more Chengdu restaurant, and then all of a sudden there were hot pot places that were open, Moloton places that were open, so that's something that I really like about it. But something about China in general that I just love is like that I miss whenever I'm in Canada or the US is that you could go out at any hours in the night almost and go for a walk or something like that, and it's just the lights are still out, there's people around.
Yeah.
I just that walking at night in China, having the because I just feel like I personally would love always living in a walkable city, where you can
Oh,
Yeah.
walk out and
absolutely.
you can go to a convenience store, you could go to a bar, you could go to a grocery store, you can go to a movie
Mm,
theater.
mm,
I feel like going to London, going to New York,
Mhm.
China, just anywhere. It gives you that if it gives you that feeling that you don't have if you're in the US or Canada. I mean, I was just in Philadelphia for the past week, and the hotel I stayed in, there was a Walmart across the street, but I can't get there because there's freaking two highways in between,
yep.
and to walk there would take me 20 minutes. So I think that accessibility for everyone is something that I think is really underrated about China.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love that point because I've lived in Shanghai for 10 years and I've lived in Chengdu for a significant amount of time. I like the accessibility. It feels like the blend in type of lifestyle is a real city. And then it's just to give you a sense of living.
Hmm.
While some cities in China, where I lived in Beijing for 5 years, and then that feels a bit like scattered, and then it
Yeah.
like every crossroad is like over 8 lanes of cars, and
Mm,
that is a little bit depressing because it feels like you're not living in the city. You're just here. While in like cities in Shanghai, you feel like you're living. You have a life
mm,
here. So
yeah,
I
Yeah.
get the sensation, and it's very different.
100%. But I'm just happy that Danny is helping us promoting the Chengdu amazingness to the world, especially in the
Absolutely.
Hollywood
It's
industry.
amazing.
It's so impressive that you're embracing your identity so openly and then proudly. And then maybe next time when you win the Oscar, we can open a hot pot food stand
Oh,
at the
yeah,
Oscar premium night.
that'd be
Yes, and
crazy.
then we'll have
I
to
mean,
invite Danny back.
I remember I did an article because after my Michael Jackson stuff, I was in China for a little bit, and there was this like big Chinese newspaper that interviewed me. Um, I forgot what it's called. I think it's 中国网 or something like that. It's china.org.cn. It's like a big Chinese newspaper, and they've
Hmm.
Mm,
interviewed me about like being in China during the pandemic and how like the perception was compared to how the West was
Hmm.
reporting it. And I kind of just gave an interview saying that like it's a lot better in China than I thought it would be, and how I feel that there's a lot of work to be done in the representation of China in the West, and there's a lot of xenophobia online. And I remember like my dad read that article, and he was just like, I swear he held a grudge against me for being so openly political. And I think this is before I kind of demonstrated like I've got things to say in this world. But he gave me a talk about it, and I stood my ground. I said that this is who I am as a person. If I want to be a great filmmaker, I have to be speaking and letting my
Authentic.
emotions felt about issues like this. For example, I would watch a movie about China or something like that, and when the people go to China, in the movie, you would see like a trash can or like a pile of trash on the road as like the first establishing shot. And obviously, like, sure, like that exists, but I could easily you don't see that when people go to New York in movies, right? You don't see they freaking see a shot of a trash can as the first image. And I feel that there's so much like subtle programming that goes
Mm,
on, you know, of people's perception of Chinese people, Chinese Americans, Asian Americans in the West. That I felt that if I can do something to help, even a little bit, shape that, just to push back on that narrative, or shine a new light, or
Mhm.
inspire someone else to shine a new light, I think I would be doing my part, and so that's how I always felt, and that's something that I'm going to continue to do.
That's
that's
brilliant.
so
I love
amazing.
it.
So amazing. I think maybe 2 episodes ago, we also interviewed a artist, right? And a
Hmm.
portraitist from New York. And then she exactly mentioned the same thing, is that because when she writes book nowadays, a lot of the publisher from the States wants her to write a story in a certain way because that's how they portray China, or like Asian, in a certain way. And then she was like, no, like this is not what I wanted to write. Like this is not how they should be. So I think because of people like you and her, like that, existed, right, to help them to break the stereotype. I think this is so big. Like this is brilliant. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this is amazing because I want to follow up on this topic actually as a very obvious minority director in this industry, which is pretty much dominated by older, paler people. What is your
Non-Asian.
biggest,
Yeah.
yeah, what is your biggest challenge for your career advancement?
Um, I think the biggest challenge um for me, just to be able to move forward and be peaceful about it in my mindset. My mindset is always just, I'm not going to worry about what they're thinking about me, and I
Mm,
try to just, you know, ignore what people
the noise.
the noise, and just try to focus on what I can do, and make the best film that I can, and do everything I can to control what I can control, but definitely I want to tell a story about being an Asian American in this industry in documentary filmmaking. um so when we made this film, right, it's a story about Orson Welles, but it ties in this other story of a Japanese American, right?
Hmm.
Um, the point of this is, the idea is that Orson Welles, from the beginning of the story to the end of the story, he leaves America in 1947, right? So it's
Hmm.
a story of
Hmm.
how he was driven out of America, and along the same timeline, I have a story of a Japanese American,
Hmm.
where he is in America, and he goes to Japan, and Japan gets bombed, and then he returns to America. So it's like the juxtaposition of someone leaving America and someone coming back to America.
Yes.
Um, and I do remember that we had a couple distributors telling me that if I cut the Asian American story, they would take our film right away. So so that is definitely, you know, for as much as people, of course, if you make like a China bad documentary, an anti-China
Mm,
documentary, that's okay. I think they accept
they would
films
love
like
it.
that. It was, look at back to the main point, is that when I was told that, that, if I cut this one story, that they would take my film. That's when I kind of started realizing, hey, like
Mm,
it's not all about merit. There's some other stuff at play here,
yeah.
Mm.
and I'm really glad that I stick to my I didn't waver on my stance despite all the pressure of over a year of people trying to cut that storyline, and it turned out to work well, I guess.
Wow. I think that's for sure a tough path, but you as a pioneer, right, in this film industry or like the Hollywood industry in the States, I think you're setting the bar. You're breaking their stereotype or breaking how they want to do things, and then to show them as a minority filmmaker that you can also stay true to yourself, and also to film or show what the China is about or what Asia is really about. So yeah, I think you're definitely the pioneer of this, and yeah, I think this is very very insightful and inspiring.
If it weren't people like you or like Jiao Yang from last time, it's just the narrative and representation is just going to keep going down, like deteriorating. So it's hard, and sometimes the harder path is the right path.
Mm,
Yeah. And I'm in a position right now where, I can stick to my beliefs and hold on a little bit longer. Because I'm so young and naive, right? And so I think, when I was doing these shows earlier, a lot of the critics, they introduced me and they say, like, they think it's really interesting that, like, I didn't go to film school and stuff like that, and they kind of frame it as like an advantage. And I think in a way it is, because sometimes I would have like an idea or something, people are like, oh, you're not allowed to do that, right? But it's like, why am I
Mm.
not allowed to do that? Like, why is this so against, what
mm.
you can do
What
or cannot do?
Mm.
So
principle, right? Yeah.
What was your background from school?
from school,
Uh-huh.
um, I was in Victoria, in UVic, and I was gonna play basketball there, but terrible knee surgeries didn't allow for that to
Hmm.
happen. And
Hmm.
so when that hope died, I transferred to UBC,
Hmm.
and I was a sociology major, I think. Yeah, sociology major. Yeah, I was a sociology major.
Nice.
And thinking back though, I think that probably helped me more in filmmaking than like
Absolutely.
than actually studying filmmaking, because stuff
100%.
like talking about like how a camera operates and how to use a clapperboard, the history of cinema. I love studying that by myself, but to just have a grand view of the world and society, I think, even though maybe at the time I didn't put as much work into it as I should have, I think in the long run it definitely helped out.
Yeah. I think you need to be sensitive, right, to the world or like to what's
Yeah,
happening around you. So you as a filmmaker can actually capture the stuff that the general public sometimes cannot. So I'm 100%
yeah,
sure, you studying sociology definitely contributed a lot of your success, right, of your filmmaking. So yeah.
And it's
So yeah.
providing like different perspectives and makes you think out of that box of
Hmm.
filmmaking. So it's great. It's brilliant and it's pieced
yeah.
together. So it's
Because
great.
I would also say that when I was actually in school in sociology,
Hmm.
if you would ask me then if I was learning anything, I would definitely have said like no, and that it's a waste of time. So I'm sure maybe for like university students who are listening to this podcast, it's like maybe how you're feeling right now about what you're learning is that it's useful information and stuff like that. But as you get older, but maybe it come back and being helpful. You never know. And for
Mm.
me, I think it's definitely the case.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And also, I think what I'm hearing is that, Danny, you truly did turn your passion into a career, right? Because you mentioned that earlier. All you wanted to do is you wanted to be a content creator and then you want to do something on YouTube. And then, something happened, your hard work, the luck, and then like that whole career path just took away. Like, is that the right thing I'm hearing?
I think it's My passion throughout high school was always to be a basketball player. Like that was like
Mm,
I was locked into that goal, right?
mm,
Like there was no other job for me. That was I was gonna be a professional basketball, and there's like I was gonna do everything I can to make that happen. But when I suffered that knee injury, I kind of had to realize that this is gonna be unlikely. I'm not gonna play in the most important time of my life. I had to sit out for an entire year because of my knee. And from when I had that year off, I realized that I had to think of other passion of mine that I could pursue, you know. And at that point, I think I even like dancing was one of them, because I love to dance. Being I was a magician too. When I was in college, I worked as a magician. That was one of my biggest passions. Was magic, and so I had a lot of passion like that. But filmmaking was definitely not one of them.
Hmm.
I think YouTube was always kind of it was supposed to be the medium of how I broadcasted my passion of
Right.
either magic or playing basketball
Or
or
dancing.
blogging or stuff like that. So um when I got into when I made that Michael Jackson documentary, and then I definitely didn't think of myself even then as a filmmaker. I was still in the
mm,
mindset of this is just a project that I'm doing. But when I after this project, obviously, during the pandemic, I told myself that this is what I'm gonna do. I'm good at this. Let's try to let's see if we can double down on it. And obviously, it has worked out. But I
mm,
think the important thing is that you have to have a passion, but you have to be able to pivot away from it as well. It's not giving up; it's just pivoting to diversifying your energy into a different path. Because if you have only your identity, for example, if your identity is just on basketball and
Yeah.
something happened to you, you would be crushed. You would be
Mm.
that's your only identity. So
Yeah.
I think having different passion is very
Hmm.
important, because that then you can diversify, where that energy is going, so that if basketball didn't work out, hey, I can focus on this other stuff. And I think that is something that people that's an underrated aspect of
Hmm.
pursuing your own path, is to not be like drilled in like I have to only just do this one thing.
Hmm.
Unless of course like unless you see that there's a path, right? Like for example, like the way that I'm into filmmaking right now is probably like I'm not thinking about basketball or anything else now, because like that I see a path
Yeah.
here. But
Hmm.
before, when you're just choosing a path, I think it's really
Yeah.
important to just like if you're working on something for like 5 years and there's like um no improvement. This is what my friend, he's a film director, Adam Green, told me, was that if you're working on something for 5 years and there's no improvements, you're trying to be an actor for 5 years, you're not getting called back to auditions and stuff like that. It's maybe not the worst time to pivot,
Yeah.
and of course you'll hear the stories of how someone like stuck with it for like 20 years and they like finally broke through, but that's like one in how many people, right?
Exactly.
You don't hear about the story of the person who stuck with it for 20 years and just like had a miserable life either,
mm.
because they thought that this was eventually going to happen. So
Yeah.
that would
Most
be
of them
my
have miserable life.
yeah. But
Yes.
the counterpoint to that, though, because I'm trying to consider all their perspectives, is that you can have a miserable life, but I guess if that's making you happy and you still have a side income and stuff like that, I guess that could be a great hobby, right? To keep going at it as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. That's brilliant point. It's gold.
Very smart. Yeah, so I think that was very insightful, hey. Like you're
Absolutely.
Thank you.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely different perspective. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest takeaway for sure. So yeah, speaking of which, Danny, like what would you give, like for somebody, I think who's a aspiring filmmaker, particularly from like an immigrant background, like what advice would you give them if they wanted to follow your path, right? Be a filmmaker, be a director.
Um, I think the advice I would give is that the obvious one is to follow your own path, to create your own lane, right? Um, don't be so like set on one road to go.
Mm,
And the other is like, you know, if they're trying to be a filmmaker, I would highly suggest to, do your homework, study movies. You have to love what this business is, You have to absolutely love film. You have to
Mm,
love every aspect of it. You love talking to people, you love directing, you love seeing images on the screen. And I think for me, I when people talk to me about wanting to be a filmmaker, but they haven't done any homework, they don't watch any movies, they don't study movies, they don't read books. It's hard for me to, of course, there's like the select few that are like touched by God, who are just born to be a filmmaker. But I feel that you need to have a requisite amount of work put into what you want to do, right?
mm,
You have to watch films. You have to watch films that interest you. You have to watch the great films. Watch as many
mm,
films as you can and read books about filmmaking, about your interests, and
mm,
from there, try to create your own path. And I think the easiest way to do that would be to find directors that you want to emulate their career off of, that is kind of realistic, similar to your situation. Study how they got to where they are, right? What film festivals did they go to? What type of films did they make? Did they create a short? So if I
mm,
was starting out, that's the advice that I would give myself, is that, one is to study the films, study the greats, study people who've come before you, and respect that. That's a I think so much of my generation now doesn't respect the history of the arts, of history in general.
mm,
I'm kind of a traditionalist in that sense of, respecting the people, that the greats that have come before me, that
mm,
paved this way. So that is number one. And number two, I think you also have to study the people who are in similar situations as you. And this doesn't just go for filmmaking, right? This can go for, starting a business, or
any
working a job,
career,
or any
any career.
career. You
Hmm.
you could you find someone whose career path is, similar to yours, and see what they did, right? And see if you, even if you can't mimic it, obviously you're not going to mimic it one to one. See if you can create something similar. Use that as a blueprint for yourself. So those are the two. But the studying the history part is so it just, like, for me, that's when people want to work on a project that I do, that's one part that I want to know for sure, is like how much you've put into this, right? And
Yeah.
for example, my sister, she is this doesn't just apply to the film industry, but my sister's in
Hmm.
tea making, right? And you know, she's filled my room. Now that I'm not there in China, she's filled my room as a storage for her tea books, and it's just so
Hmm.
inspiring to see that, like, she's put the work in to know what she's doing, so that she can be as prepared as she can. Well, does that guarantee you success? It really doesn't, but when
No,
that
it doesn't.
opportunity comes, you're going to be prepared. And so I think that's what's the most important.
That's gold. I think those very simple principles are extremely valuable. No matter which career path you're on, be prepared, put the work necessary in, and then you can at least seize the opportunity when it shows up. So, given that you've watched so many movies, Danny, what's your favorite Chinese movie?
Oh, I have a
Favorite. Or
I have
favorite
a
director. Favorite director or favorite movie, whichever one you pick.
I, I think my favorite movie. I do remember my favorite movie. Ugh, I have a few, but let's just say, obviously, "In the Mood for Love" is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Um,
That okay,
Wong Kar-wai
fine.
is like, he's
Okay,
Well,
like
kind
okay.
of way.
he's one of my favorite directors, and my dad used to show me a lot of Feng Xiaogang movies, and I remember I watched Youth. I think it's called
Mhm,
Fanghua in theaters, and that
mhm,
left like a pretty big impression on me when I went,
mhm,
just to see the
mhm,
crowd's reaction to it, and
mhm,
the emotional roller coaster that you go on.
mhm,
So those two are the ones that kind of had a lasting impression on me. But "In the Mood for
mhm,
Love" is definitely something that I try to study a lot of the framing. It's such a beautiful film, and
It is. That's my favorite
Beautiful.
too.
You can
I
watch it
mean,
like over and over.
over and over, and you notice new details, right? And
Oh, 100%.
I'm really into films that are very subtle in its messaging, but it's rewatchable. One of my
Mhm.
other favorite films is Vertigo, and I think In the Mood for Love is kind of like a child of Vertigo. So
Mm.
it's the score as well is just it's magical. It's beautiful, and you may making me want to just go and watch it right now again. So yeah.
Okay, so to wrap this up, tell us
Um,
about what you're working on, and then what are we going to see in the near future?
Yeah.
um, the project that I'm working on right now is that during American, I one of the producers, one of the people in the cast that I met, um, I was in Brazil for a film festival for American. This is a luck piece all over again. This is a festival. This is another Oscar qualifying festival that we did not get into. Like, we did not get into it. Like, straight up, the deadline passed and we didn't get an email. Right, so I thought it was done, and then like, because I was in China during this point, and my dad was really annoyed with how like disappointed I was because that was a festival that I really wanted to go to. It was in Brazil, right? Of course, who doesn't want to go to Brazil? And 1 week before the festival, or like 2 weeks before the festival, we got in, and I scrambled. People were all busy, so me and Laura, who is in American, we went to this festival together, and on one of the off days, we had a coffee break, and she had a phone call, and I she was on the phone for like an hour, right? And I asked her, what this call was about, and she explained it, and it was very similar to a story that was going on in my family at that time too, that I had just heard about. And so we didn't really think much about it. I was like talking about how she should make it into a short, but the idea for that just kept growing more and more in my head as the months progressed. That I proposed the idea to her that we should make this into a documentary short. It's fun. It doesn't take as much time. And it would be a beautiful story that I think we could tell together. And so, for the past couple weeks, we've just been, kind of shooting this passion project together in her home, and it's so now I'm doing the editing again. So I think we will try to start a Kickstarter for it for people who
Mhm.
want to be involved. But right as of right now, I'm just working on it myself, and it's a again this is kind of a project in between project. It's a short documentary. It isn't a feature length. I'm trying to take a 1 year break from doing a feature because, man, when I was doing American, like it was it was just basically like all my waking hours was spent just editing, for
Mhm.
pretty much 4 or 5 months. And I think I need to have a break from doing that, and this is like a good way to keep that um, energy momentum going. And I think it's a good transition because a lot of the stuff that we shot in this short film is a little bit more experimental. So I think in the future, I want to have my shot in narrative filmmaking, making actual narrative film, and I think this
Mhm.
could be a step towards that. And I'm very excited to see how it turns out.
That's great. We're
That's
excited too.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
We're
excited
looking
to
forward
see
into it.
exactly,
yeah.
and then we're
This
very
is,
excited to see your face in the Oscar in the near future. I'm sure
one day,
that day will come soon.
one day.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Okay. Anyways, I wanted to show our gratitude for you, Danny, to come to our podcast today to
Thank
share
you,
your
Danny.
story. Thank you. I think you
No,
shed so
thank
many
you.
lights, so many different perspectives. I feel I personally have learned a lot, and I feel very inspired from you. I'm sure Flora feel the same, right? Like I hope
Yeah,
so is our audience. Yeah.
it's so valuable and inspiring, and then we appreciate you.
Mm.
Well,
All
thank you
right.
so much for the
Thanks.
kind words.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. Thanks, Danny. Yeah,
Thank you so
so
much.
I guess that's it for today, Flora.
Yep, that's it for
O-
today.
Okay, so thanks for tuning
That's
in.
awesome.
Thank you. And then you can continue finding us on Work Without Borders through YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And then we will see you again next Wednesday.
See you next Wednesday. Bye.